President Bush 41 believed that Cheney embodied an image of the 43 administration that was in some ways counterproductive around the world.
The elder Bush reserves his harshest criticism for Donald Rumsfeld, of whom he's quoted as saying, "I don't like what he did, and I think it hurt the president." George W. Bush, having his iron-ass view of everything, there's a lack of humility, a lack of seeing what the other guy thinks. He's more kick-ass and take names.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that, of course, from the book on George H.W. Bush, Destiny and Power, by John Meacham. And let's go to Pat Buchanan, the one and only Patrick J. Buchanan, former Republican presidential candidate, former Nixon and Reagan aide, syndicated columnist. And Pat, welcome aboard. So what do you think? This is big news now. Are you surprised that that the first President Bush, H.W. Bush, would have these I guess, feelings kept inside for so long about Rumsfeld and Cheney?
Well, with regard to Don Rumsfeld, I mean, I was in and around White Houses, Nixon White House, Ford, and Reagan for over 8 years. And no, it does not surprise me. Don Rumsfeld is known as a really tough infighter and, you know, was really sort of battling an awful lot of folks as far back as the Nixon and Ford administrations and up through Bush 1 and Bush 2. I don't think he was in the Bush 1 administration, but Bush 2. So, no, it doesn't surprise me. And the comment about Cheney did seem to change to me somewhat from the defense secretary under Bush 1 to the vice president under Bush 2, where he basically was the real driving force behind, I think, the Iraq War, which I opposed. And my guess is that Bush 1 may have opposed that to a degree because one of his closest aides is a friend of mine, General Scowcroft, was very much, if you will, in the Buchanan corner of saying, hold on before we go marching up to Baghdad.
All right, well, that's interesting. So let me tie this all in here now to modern day where we are today. And you wrote a column, you quoted the New York Times saying that the United States is being sucked into a new Middle East war, and you said that you agree with that. Based on what we now know, or what the U.S. intelligence believes we know about the airliner, the Russian airliner that was, they say, blown up by ISIS or ISIS affiliates over the Sinai, how much closer do you believe, or how much more possible does that make a U.S. involvement in another Middle East war?
Well, I think you've only got 50 personnel that are in there or going in, and they're top-level special ops people, but they can't really affect the outcome of this conflict. The Kurds in Syria are a pretty decisive force, but they're very much disliked by the Turks, who are very leery and wary of them. I don't think you're going to get a major American ground involvement in Syria at all. And while ISIS is our enemy, our mortal enemy in terms of what they do, Al-Qaeda is the one that's been doing the terrorist against the United States, so I would put them both in the same box. But, Steve, I don't see the United States, the American people, supporting any kind of intervention of the magnitude that we had in either Afghanistan or Iraq. I think that's all over. I do think the United States will be a party under any administration to efforts really to degrade ISIS and to degrade Al-Qaeda, but whether we're going to go in there and clean it up as the prime mover, I don't think so.
All right, let me switch to domestic politics here. We now have Marco Rubio backed by a number of billionaires, Paul Singer, some say Sheldon Adelson, and more. They're strongly pro-Israel. Are you concerned about Rubio's stance on Israel and the implications of that support?
Well, I think that almost every candidate, including Donald Trump, I've seen, is a very strong supporter of Israel. There's no doubt about that. I mean, with regard to Sheldon Adelson, the point about him is that he up in a speech or in a Q&A session, he recommended a preemptive nuclear strike on Iran simply to wake them up, and then if they didn't give up their nuclear program entirely, to put one on Tehran. I think that's different than simply backing Israel as a friend and ally of the United States. I do think your point is well taken on another matter here, though. The establishment, the donor class, are moving directly behind Rubio, because I think they have concluded that in the establishment bracket, he is the most likely who's going to emerge, who can take down Donald Trump and maybe Ben Carson.
All right, is Jeb Bush finished in your view?
I think Jeb. It's hard for me to see how Jeb comes back. His campaign has almost been sad, in that he's got to be a far better manager and governor than he has been a candidate. And I haven't seen real signs of movement here. I don't think he's dead, but I think they've moved him into intensive care.
All right, I don't mean to laugh at that. Pat, read Pat Buchanan at newsmax.com/insiders. Pat, thank you. Give Me 5 is next, folks. Don't go away.